Look, y'all already know me. I can't go anywhere without picking up a new piece of art, a little trinket, a poster, something for the crib. That's why the other art fair, that's a dangerous place for me. It's 4 days of independent artists, thousands of original artwork starting at around $100. Even if you're not trying to buy something, you can meet the artists, attend workshops and interactive installations, or, hang around for the mini golf, the DJ sets, and the fully stocked bar. Add the other art fair to your calendar. It's October 30th through November 2nd at Artifact Events in Ravenswood, and tickets start at just $20. Book your tickets online at theotherartfair.com. Look, it's already election season, my friends, and Chicago needs election judges for the March 17th primary. You can help your fellow Chicagoans cast their vote. You do have to be a registered voter in Cook County and a U.S. citizen, but you can earn up to $230 for your service. And if you speak Spanish, Hindi, Polish, Korean, Chinese, or Tagalog, then Chicago elections definitely needs your help. Help support communities across the city by serving as an election judge next year. Head to pollworker.chicagoelections.gov or call 312-269-7984. Today on CityCast Chicago, ICE agents gas yet another Chicago neighborhood. CTA fares are expected to go up next year, and we've got our favorite picks for the Chicago International Film Festival. It's Friday, October 17th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. I'm joined by some amazing journalists this morning from Block Club Chicago, Francia Garcia Hernandez. Welcome back to the podcast, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
We've also got one of the podcast's oldest guests back on the show, the president of Chicago's National Association of Black Journalists, Brandon Pope. Welcome back to the pod, my friend.
Great to be back. I'll take the oldest as more of like an oldest in terms of appearances.
Just over the last 4.5 years, you were one of our longest running. If you are new to CityCast Chicago, we appreciate you being here. Welcome. As we just alluded to, we've been here for the last 4.5 years and are quickly closing in on 1,200 plus episodes. Ain't gonna be no binge watching TV this weekend. It's binge listening to the pod. Every single Friday, we bring in these amazing Chicagoans to look back on some of the biggest stories happening in our week. And I'm not going to waste your time or hold you. We're going to jump right into it today. Another week, another violent encounter in a Chicago neighborhood with ICE agents as these goons continue to move through our city and state with absolute recklessness, aggression, even as Chicago stands up at every single turn. Francia, you have been covering this so very closely. Can you describe what happened on the far southeast side earlier this week?
Yes, on Tuesday, there were reports of ICE agents in the east side of Chicago, the neighborhood, and a crowd gathered at 105 and N Street. And this was because federal agents caused a crash that brought out a crowd of onlookers and about 40 Border Patrol agents who gathered at the site and then started using tear gas against some of the people who were protesting and recording their presence in their neighborhoods. Obviously, tensions escalated. There were several videos and several instances of federal agents throwing the gas canisters to the crowd, where there were elderly people, where there were younger kids and even children. There are video footage of, agents chasing down some of the protesters and throwing them to the ground, multiple agents against one person. So it was really another instance of Border Patrol and residents confronting, but I would really say federal agents using violent tactics against people who were gathered there after causing a car crash.
We've seen protests in neighborhoods across the city as community members and organizations have participated in Migros Watch and ICE Watch, not only Know Your Rights trainings, but also sort of daily reporting on these sightings. Where are they? One individual in the neighborhood said that the local rapid response network had reported ICE in at least 4 different locations during that day. And I will say, I am not some type of expert in violent policing tactics. But I will say, every time I watch one of these videos, I don't think there's any way to say it. There's a clear amateur nature to what you're watching, right? There is a clear sense that these people don't know the neighborhoods, right? They're claiming they have arresting powers that we all know they do not. And so, as you point out, Francia, they're coming into these neighborhoods on 100, charged up, ready to racially profile. And so when anyone gives them pushback, whether it's protesters or journalists, it's clear their first tactic and their first response is, well, first to lie about the situation they're involved in, because we keep, having their story come out that they were crashed into. Then we see the videos. And then their second tactic is to just start firing on the crowd in some form or fashion.
And in fact, a federal court ruled last week that Border Patrol and other agencies could not use these tactics in Broadview, and that they could not, quote unquote, continue these attacks on journalists and peaceful protesters. However, we saw this happen on Tuesday after the court order was issued. One of the things that immigrant rights groups have pointed out is the need to document these instances, because we're seeing violations of this happening. And as you mentioned, they're also calling on neighbors to document detentions and the presence of ICE or Border Patrol or other federal agents in their neighborhoods, because there have been several instances where what the Department of Homeland Security describes as what happened is at odds with what witnesses and video shows. So it's something that many groups are pointing out and calling out on, just because it's important to have that record and to be able to hold the government accountable. At the end of the day, these federal agents are government officials, and they're paid by taxpayers. So it's something that has been pointed out repeatedly.
What have you heard from residents, not only in on the Far East Side, but in other places that has experienced this violence?
There is, definitely a sense of fear. There's a sense of anger of why that is happening, why some neighborhoods are being targeted, why some especially Latino or Black neighborhoods have been targeted and have seen this use of force in their neighborhoods against their neighbors, in some cases against children. We saw, these big South Shore raid that my colleague Mac Liederman reported on, where there were reports of women and children being zip-tied and kept in vans for hours, U.S. citizens getting detained and not being released for hours and not being read their rights. So it really is causing a reaction where people are wondering why this is happening, what the purpose of this is, and are really concerned about, the violation of their rights and other people's rights.
Yeah. And you mentioned Broadview. It doesn't help that when, the fence that, a judge ordered to come down comes down, and when, state troopers come in, they kind of pick up where federal agents left off. So they're standing there with batons, aggressively pushing back on protesters. Brandon, you've been following this just as much as the rest of us. What was your reaction to the video and the scene earlier this week?
It's a heavy question. It's jarring, to see your neighbors, your community, living in fear and having terror inflicted upon them. There's no doubt, you can't deny the images, the videos, the accounts we're seeing, as much as DHS and ICE and others want to try to deny it. We've already seen numerous cases now of the official account they give being completely wrong or having a distortion of the facts altogether. And so I just really think if there's any positive out of it, it's the fact that I love seeing that Chicagoans, as always, are standing 10 toes down, showing real community love. I'm seeing amazing images of people who, in the midst of being tear gassed, maybe many people haven't been tear gassed before. These are ordinary neighborhoods. You have neighbors stepping out of their front porch to make sure they're able to help other people. That's beautiful to see in the midst of all this terror. But yeah, it's jarring nonetheless. And it's hurtful to see all this happening. At the end of the day, something's got to give here. And this Operation Midway Blitz, there's no, set end time. I think that's intentional from the Trump administration. And at this point, we have to wonder and have to push back on how long this occupation is happening for, why this occupation is even needed at this point, because many Chicagoans are expressing right now that the war zone that they talked about, the hellhole Chicago allegedly was, they brought that here.
There were no tanks here before you got here. There were no Black Hawk helicopters.
Exactly. And I think it's fair to ask this question. Who has the right to liberty in our country? Who is viewed as an actual human and American citizen in this country? What this administration is communicating is if you live in Chicago, New York, LA, Portland, or any city that they deem a democratic city, everybody in that city deserves to have this, invasion of their personal lives. That is a jarring and chilling message to send down from the top levels of our government. So now's the time for people to be vigilant. The biggest thing you can do right now is when you see something, say something. When you see something, record it. When you see something, don't just record and post, but send it to journalists, because these algorithms, it's tougher and tougher to get a lot of these things to float to the top. There are things happening constantly that people still aren't seeing. And so it's really helpful if you send to journalists and newsrooms directly so they can make sure they're spreading that, especially Block Club Chicago and especially the Tribe. They're doing a great job on the ground, making sure that people are informed of what's going on.
I'm glad you're reminding people not simply to post. I had said that a few weeks ago, and executive producer Simone Alisayer reminded me of some of the nuance in just sort of recording and posting, because even we saw earlier this week, Facebook took down a group of, I believe, Chicagoans who were participating in like ICE Watch through their city. Make sure you're also tapped in with local organizations, journalists who are going to use that material to, like you say, paint the real story that's happening in front of all of our faces. Fall is in full swing, which means fall theater season is back and cracking across the city. And I got another pick for you to look out for. Don't wait to secure your tickets to Timeline Theater Company's world premiere of Hundreds and Hundreds of Stars. Motherhood, marijuana, and the multiverse collide in this story set in Chicago, exploring family, immigration, and identity. The play follows Clara, who's applying for U.S. citizenship ahead of a trip to Paris with her tween daughter, but Clara's application is unexpectedly flagged, threatening the only home she's ever known. We got a quote from the playwright and star Sandra Delgado, who says, "This is a very personal family tale, not unlike those playing out more and more every single day in Chicago and around the country." Now playing in a limited run through November 9th, this Timeline production is being hosted in the immaculate Looking Glass Theater space in the historic Water Tower Waterworks at Pearson in Michigan. Visit timelinetheater.com for more info and to get your tickets today. Seriously, the temps are dropping, the rain is coming, and you don't want to run out of time to replace your old, stuck, or drafty windows. Y'all already know what I'm about to say. Window Nation offers some of the best replacement windows out there. Plus, the installation crews are quick and effective, finishing a job in a day or less, and you can rest easy with Window Nation's lifetime warranty. And get this, right now you can make no payments for 2 years, no monthly payments, no down payment, and no interest until 2027. Protect your home into the future with high-quality windows from Window Nation. Schedule your fast free estimate now with the pros at Window Nation, and do it before October 31st to save big. Head to windownation.com. Pope, over to you. Chicago Area Transit Agency, CTA, RTA, PACE, and Metro are facing a combined $200 million budget gap when COVID-19 relief money runs out. Lawmakers are supposedly down in Springfield trying to work out a plan. Now, for some listeners, we talked about this a little bit last Friday because we have been told all year that these agencies faced an expected $770 million gap, but they got that down to a measly 200. Now, this week, we heard at least one of these agencies, CTA, plans to address the gap regardless of what goes down in Springfield. Pope, catch us up. What can riders expect moving forward?
Yeah, it's all going to kick off in February, so you have a little time to prepare yourself. But these fares are going to go up by 25 cents, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for families who already struggle, that can make a difference, especially when you're doing multiple rides in a day. You're adding on potentially extra dollars onto what you're doing. This is the first increase since 2018. All eyes are on a Tuesday session in Springfield for lawmakers to get together and once again have an opportunity to address this before it's too late. You mentioned that $200 million budget gap that shrank from $770 million. Our CityCast Chicago data team did some number crunching here, and we figured out that $60 million would be the total revenue, around the estimated revenue generated from this increase. That's a little bit of a dent in the $200 million, but there's still going to be a lot of money that the CTA needs. You also have federal funding being cut by the Trump administration for things like the Red Line Extension Project and other major initiatives. The breakdown here, they're going to raise one-day passes from $5 to $6, 7-day passes from $20 to $25, 30-day passes go from $75 to $85, and there's no more 3-day passes starting in February. They're going to eliminate that altogether. So 25-cent raise on every fare. If you want those passes, those are going to bump up by $1 to $10. So brace yourself for that. And as Houston creeps up in the rankings when it comes to, the top cities, Chicago's got to take that into consideration. People move here because of CTA. You risk losing more population when the CTA is gone. So something to look at.
And you mentioned people who move here for CTA. I've seen so many testimonies for people who come to the city months in, years in, and all they can say is no other city got it like this, where you can, for the most part, reliably utilize, rail as well as buses to get pretty much account for a good amount of the city. Of course, for those of us who live here and have been here for a very long time, we see the gaps in the system, right? We see all of its flaws, all of the things that it can improve on, the ways that it's degraded over the last few years. And even with that and our desire to hold it accountable and for it to improve, it is still head and shoulders above most other major cities when it comes to public transit. And as someone who over the last 18 months has probably increased my use maybe 5-fold of both buses and trains, I will say these prices will impact me, as you said, not nearly as much as the most vulnerable people in our city who really rely on it. For people who use just your phone to pay, that fare is going up as well, and it's higher than the sort of cash or if you're paying at like one of those venture card dispensers. This is not the last change that's likely to come to this system, whether what we get out of Springfield over the next couple of weeks or the pressure that Springfield sort of levies back on these agencies to make some changes of their own, whether that's, employees, whether it's other little taxes and fees elsewhere, whether it's a change in operating times. We'll still wait and see. But it's clear that we are in for some changes over the next few months. Every single Friday, we also like to throw some attention to stories that were maybe not on the front pages of our newspapers this week. And Francie, I want to start with you because the story you brought today is one we've been covering for the last 2+ years, as West Side residents are still recovering, looking for help after we got record rainfall in July of 2023. And some of them are still, pressuring the city, the state, and federal agencies to kind of show up and help out residents. Can you kind of tell us more?
A group of seniors out of the West Side had planned to protest this week at City Hall because they have brought forward their concerns that 2 years after these flooding occurred, they still have some of the damage in their homes. They still have mold in their homes, and obviously this poses a risk to their health. It's a group called the West Side Seniors that planned to protest at City Hall, and they were calling out also the fact that there was some help that was provided, but it was not equally distributed, and that some victims never got any sort of state, city, federal help to rebuild their homes or just clear out all the damage that happened because of the flooding. The testimonies of some of these seniors and how they had up to 9 inches of water in their homes, and how that cost them damage to their homes, but also in some cases to equipment they kept in their homes, to furniture, to personal items that they could have used for themselves or for work. FEMA provided some aid to some communities, but it did take a while for FEMA relief to come through. And this was months after people had already seen damage to their homes, and in some cases had been unable to clear it out. In one case, we were seeing someone report up to $100,000 in repairs that they would need, and they only got like $2,000 from FEMA funds. So a big gap there.
Mm-hmm. And some are saying that the city's program, which would offer up to maybe $25,000 for residents, is still moving pretty slow for a lot of these people, where I think something like only 5 of the 20 older people in the group who apply for relief have been fully accepted and received work from contractors. And then 2 of those 5 homes where the repairs were completed got flooding again this year. And I think this story is so important, not only because it's a reminder of, again, how Southwest Side residents feel left out and unseen when these tragedies happen. It's important because flooding is, I think, by far our area's number one natural disaster. And as climate change continues, there is likely to be more increased record flooding. We're likely to see broader impacts across the city for people who live closer to the river or the lake, maybe. We talked with folks from the Illinois Answers Project last year about just how underfunded and underprepared the city's flood management and resource systems are.
And just to remind people, like, that happened 2 years ago. And then this year we saw the Southwest Side getting flooded twice within a month, where thousands of people reported water in their basements. Those who lived in basement units reported loss of all of their, property. So even as this crisis from 2 years ago has not been fully resolved for many neighbors, we are seeing others starting to happen, and we are yet to see how these thousands of neighbors in Southwest Side will be receiving aid, if at all, or how long it'll take for that aid to come through.
Yeah, especially given, at least when these West Side residents a few years ago reached out to FEMA, Biden was still in office. They were underfunded, but they weren't facing the drastic federal cuts that they are now. And so the type of help that families are hoping for this time around, as you point out, is even less likely to come. And if it does, it will likely not be, in a timely fashion. Pope, over to you. Earlier this week, I was sitting in my room when Taylor sort of came in a little, clearly upset. And I was wondering what's going on. For them to show me an Instagram post from the Promontory, which is a building that I have hosted storytelling shows. I have performed in for grown folks stories. I've hosted community forums and local leaders at the Promontory. Like it's probably been one of my artistic homes over the last 10 years in Chicago. And now a lot of folks are sad. Brandon, what's the news coming out of the Promontory this week?
Yeah, it's really sad. The Promontory, which has been a staple in Hyde Park for so long, both for the arts and for the food, is shutting down, sunsetting after their New Year's Eve party on December 31st, officially January 1st when they're going to be done. The good news is that you do have a Black-owned restaurant moving in to that restaurant space that's been vacant for a while since the pandemic. Closed down their operations there. It's called Sanders Barbecue. So that should be good, at least good place to eat, good local business still moving in.
They were just named one of the best restaurants in America by the New York
Absolutely.
Times. Their spot in Beverly has been there for a little over a year. My mama know they people, so we didn't had a lot of their food.
I can't wait to try it. Then you hyping it up real good. So I'll be over there. I don't say no to any grilled meats. Never do. Here's the sad part. Like you said, Promontory. It's been such a fixture. I got so many memories there of just like some of my favorite concerts and artists that perform there. Some of my favorite just gatherings of the
Day
Black
parties.
community have been there. Great artists, great like they have this thing where they had different Black businesses pop up and have kind of like different kiosks, kind of like a Black business fair. They would do that every year. That was really awesome.
They had the Jola Festival going down.
Location was perfect, and it follows other closings we've seen lately, like Bureau Bar, another Black-owned spot, very popular, shut down. And it's raised a lot of concern among Black Chicagoans just about, hey, what's happening to our spaces, especially as you see the businesses that are popping up now tend to be more Nashville-centric cowboy country bars. And as those emerge more and more, it's like, where are the spaces for us? Well, they're closing. And it's a tough economy. It's tough for small business owners right now because costs have been exploding and people just don't got it on them to take on those costs either. People would rather get their $8 eggs than spend $200 on bottle service. And I think that makes plenty of sense. So it's just a really tough sign of the times right now as Black Chicagoans wonder, where are our spaces? What are happening to them?
Yeah, Grown Folks Stories is going down tonight at the Promontory. I do think I'm going to pull up for that New Year's Eve party and say goodbye. The Promontory was for so many people their first maybe larger crowd, like with a little bigger stage that kind of had like an ambiance to it that wasn't just, in the back of a store or in like a house party kind of vibe. It like this was their breakout moment to bigger stages in Chicago. This was their entryway into kind of performing into some bigger live crowds. And so I know this is going to be a huge loss for people across the city.
Hi, I'm Michael Ziviak, Chief Revenue Officer of CityCast. Why do most of us want to learn a new language? It's because we want to speak it out in the real world with real people. Babbel gets you there fast. My daughter's a senior in high school, and after she graduates, we're taking a father-daughter trip to Spain. I know, she's spoiled, but that's on me. I'll be honest, my Spanish right now is pretty much tops out at ¿Dónde está la biblioteca? But when we get there, I want to actually talk to people, order food, and really connect with the locals, not just stumble through the basics. That's why I'm starting with Babbel. Learning a language with Babbel is all about small steps, big wins, and progress you can actually track and feel. And with how busy things get here at CityCast, I love that Babbel's bite-sized, 10-minute lessons fit perfectly into my day, whether it's between meetings or while I'm having coffee in the morning. I'm really excited to start picking up real-world Spanish before our trip so we can experience Spain in a more meaningful way. Right now, Babbel has a special deal for our listeners. Get up to 55% off your subscription at babbel.com/citycast. That's BABBEL.com/citycast for up to 55% off. Rules and restrictions may apply. Gracias and adios.
We're not going to leave you with a sour taste in your mouth. Every single episode of CityCast Chicago ends the exact same way. And that's with me, one, politely requesting you bring your ass back here for the next episode and continue to support the podcast and the newsletter, but also with some good news. Francia, what is your good news for CityCast Chicago today?
Yeah, I am really excited to hear that the city is expanding its composting program.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, like free drop-off sites at Chicago public libraries. I know people are not going to be like, oh, more places to drop off my trash, but it is important. It is food, this is for food waste, which, some people tend to like put it all together in one bin. But if you separate your waste and you have like all of your organics in a different bin, then you can drop off some of it at some of the local libraries in Chicago. And there's a list that you can find in Walk Club Chicago in our story. And that is a way to contribute to reducing greenhouse gas emissions, those that are linked to climate change. That is a way to keep out some waste out of landfills. So it might not seem super exciting, but it is an easy and free way to do to have a good deed toward your city and neighbors and all of those who live in this planet and are affected by waste that we all create. And if you've ever wondered, like, oh, how much can I be creating? Just look at those trash bins and tell me how often you're filling them up and emptying them out. And, multiply that by the millions of people who live here. It's a lot. So.
Yeah, we did an episode with our friend Monica Ang on composting a little bit ago when this program was getting off of the ground. And it's good to see 2 years in that these very useful programs are expanding. And if you're wondering, well, do I live close to one of these library branches? I got you. Avalon Branch, Dunning Branch, Edgebrook, Hegewisch, Lincoln Belmont, Portage Cragen, Scottsdale, Sherman Park, Tolman, Uptown, Vodak East, West Chicago Avenue, and Woodson Regional. Francia, I appreciate you putting composting on our radar this morning. Pope, over to you. I am signed up for your screening room newsletter. And you dropped a great edition over this past weekend, looking at the Chicago International Film Festival, the longest running competitive film festival in North America. What you excited for?
Man, I'm excited for a lot. I mean, this is a big weekend. You have Spike Lee, who's going to be given the Lifetime Achievement Award. You also have a really great discussion with rising director Nia DaCosta, moderated by me, breaking news, at Music Box Theater Sunday. After the screening of her much acclaimed new film, Hedda, starring Tessa Thompson. It's going to be a great discussion because, look, I'm having it. So pull up if you can. But hey, I think the big highlight here, being in Chicago gives you so much access to great things, great art, great experiences. And if you're one of those people that you watch the Oscars every year and you see the international films, you see some of these other films, and you're like, when did this come out? I have never heard of this in your life. Guess what? You're going to hear of them if you go to the film festival. Especially some of these great international films. One of the highlights for me with these international films, I got a chance to check out A Useful Ghost. It's a great Thailand-produced film, basically it's a ghost story where a woman who dies from dust poisoning possesses a vacuum. And haunts the family and her husband in a fun kind of way. But it tells a deeper story about grief, loss, and a little bit about class and how powerful governments sometimes work to crush lower classes and the working class themselves. Great narrative. And then one of the more controversial films you're going to see out there is this one called It Was Just an Accident. It comes out of Iran, but was backed by the French government and some French producers. It did not get the permission of the Iranian government because it directly attacks the authoritarian regime within Iran. It's all about a man who sees a guy who he thinks may have been the guy that tortured him when he was captured. And so he abducts the guy and drives around to try to confirm if he is this guy that tortured him or not. It's emotional. It's jarring. Keep an eye out on those international films. But overall, just go to the fest. Tickets are pretty affordable. You can find a link at Brandon Pope's Screening Room. That's bpopetv.substack.com. And don't forget, Sunday, the 19th, we'll have a great discussion at Music Box Theater starting around 5 o'clock with Nia DaCosta post-screening about her new film, Hedda.
No, those are some great options. One international feature I'm excited for is No Other Choice from Park Chan-wook starring Lee Byung-hun. I've seen the trailer. It looked great. Lee is a fantastic actor. One documentary that I'm really excited that's playing at the festival, and it's running this Saturday and next Sunday, is One Golden Summer, the story of the Jackie Robinson West Little League baseball team that won the U.S. Baseball Championship over 10 years ago. But what ended up happening was really sad because they were accused of breaking some rules around which young people could be on the team. And it really took away all of their momentum in the celebration they so rightfully earned. And so that's a documentary that I would absolutely love to watch. And so I will drop a link in the show notes, not only to the entire film festival schedule, but to some of Pope's suggestions, a part of his screening room newsletter, which you can sign up for by following the link in our show notes. I am going to round us out. If you are new here, in addition to a podcast and a newsletter, we have a pretty well-functioning website where we include all of our articles, all of our old podcast episodes, but also a packed events calendar. And if you go in there, what you will see over the next couple of days is Halloween has already started in Chicago. You got the Arts in the Dark Halloween parade on State Street this weekend. You've got the North Halstead Halloween Pup Crawl, Boo Palooza in Wicker Park. There are Halloween events taking place at Chicago public libraries across the city. I don't have no specific links for you in the show notes because you should just head over to chicago.citycast.fm and pick whichever one looks the best to you. All right. Before we get out of here, please join me in thanking our guest today from Block Club Chicago, Francia Garcia Hernandez. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
And one of Chicago's busiest journalists, Brandon Pope. Appreciate you making time this morning.
Always a great time, fam.
Before we get out of here, I want to give a huge thank you to every single person who helps make this podcast and newsletter possible. That includes executive producer Simone Alicea, our producer Michelle Navarro, our Hey Chicago newsletter editor Emmy Mack, our social media manager Rick Homuth, roving producer this week Matthew Rogers, roving newsletter editor this week Natalia Aldana. The music we all love is from my boy Sam Thousand, all the kimonos, and Mark Greenberg from the Mayfair Workshop. Additional music this week from Hip Color, courtesy of epidemicsound.com. However you interact with this podcast, I need you to know I appreciate you. And I'm going to be back bright and early next week. So there's another opportunity to come through and to keep this thing going. So I'll talk to you then. Peace. I've gotten real cool with just is if like the Uber drivers like for Jacoby, and I'm like, what's the point of correcting you, bro?
Jacoby.
Your mama, like what the hell? That laugh was,
that one. That's a good one.
I was like, we ain't going nowhere. We going to Lena Brava. It's like 15 minutes away. I don't
When
need
you
to
start
correct
acting
you
Brady,
right
I'll be like, oh, that's Jacoby. That's not Jacoby. That's Jacoby.
Damn, bro. I thought this was a safe place, but I went with oldest for a reason because right before we hopped on, you had some jokes, so I was just like, this is my cast. They gonna edit my stuff and edit yours out.
It's all good. I got you, Jacoby. I got you.
Michelle, cut that. Michelle, cut that. Yeah, censorship over here. I'm the only Jimmy Kimmel up in this bitch. I said we wasn't gonna start with no jokes. We was gonna get right into the serious stories, and then look at us playing around.